really, really, really important for us to have this conversation. Hypertension below age 40. Now, why is this conversation important? Because usually we expect hypertension to show up considerably older. We'll be speaking with Dr. Kelvin Owusu, who is the MD of Optimal Care Diagnostics. He's going to, position it for us so we know, how serious it is for you to be having hypertension below age 40. But I want to read something really quick for us before we get into that conversation. Here's a message that came through. I was diagnosed of hypertension when I was 19. I was experiencing severe headaches, tiredness, chest pains, and at times severe pounding in my chest. The doctor looked at me intensely as I was too young. He asked if I was involved in alcoholism, and I told him no. Then my mother said it may be hereditary, since there's a history of young men getting the disease in my father's family. He himself had died of stroke when he was 50. So the doctor advised me on some methods that could help to let me heal naturally. Exercising, less sugar, controlling emotions, avoiding late night meals, etc. What I did judiciously was reducing my intake of sugar. I learned how to control my anger. I always walked as an option when I moved within a community. So I suppose as opposed to driving, he would choose to walk. And I also made sure that I had enough rest. These helped me, and my BP became stable. But once in a while, I experienced a rise in my BP when I stress for some consecutive days. But then I just rest and it goes back to normal. This is coming from a gentleman called Kweku Boateng. Thank you for sending that in. Dr. Kelvin Owusu, good morning.
Morning, Grandpa.
How farest thou?
Very, very
this
well.
grandpa business, you're not going to get over it. Eh?
Oh, but I mean, if you look at the two of us, who is the grandpa?
Wow. Then does there have to be a grandpa in the equation?
Definitely.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, the grandpa
he
leads the way.
No, two young men enjoying.
I mean, for this discussion doesn't apply to you, see,
that?
because we are saying it's under
They are under 40.
Yes.
It doesn't apply to you.
No, it doesn't apply to you.
Okay, so let's just accept it as it is. Dr. Kelvin,
yes.
Let's get into the conversation right now. So, why is this even an important conversation for us to have? Hypertension below age 40.
Wow, that's quite a place to start from. First of all, I mean, that's pretty much a summary of what we are going to discuss today, the message from Kweku.
Yeah.
But let me take it from this angle. Now, up to a quarter of the world's population are hypertensive. So that's a huge number.
25% of the world's population
are hypertensive. Let me shock you. Let me shock you. 50% of those who are hypertensive are not aware they are hypertensive.
My goodness. So you are saying that roughly about a billion people
a little over a billion
are not aware. No, because you see, I'm looking at, let's say the world population is it just over 7 billion or just under 7 billion? I think it's just under 8 billion.
Yes, just under 8 billion.
Just under 8 billion. So let's assume it's 8 billion we're dealing with. A quarter of that, that's 2 billion people are living with hypertension.
Yes.
And 1 billion
are not aware. For most people,
that's a problem.
Yes, no, it's a catastrophe. It's not just and wow. by the way, up to 70% of these hypertensives are in developing countries. So these stats are actually quite
they are staggering.
Yes, yes. It tells you that if we don't do anything about this situation, we are going to have a disaster on our hands. And that's why it's important that we have this discussion.
Wow.
And increasingly, the age at which hypertension is being diagnosed is reducing. It's getting lower and lower. We have a 19-year-old who was diagnosed with hypertension.
Yeah.
and I'm happy that this person actually took responsibility for his condition and did something about it. Because most people do not do anything about it. Even though some of the people who are aware of their diagnosis don't do anything about it. Maybe it's because they are not educated enough to know the implications. Because, and typical example, a patient will come to me, I give the person the medication that is needed for controlling the blood pressure. Then after the next review, the person comes and tells me that my blood pressure is normal, so can I stop the medicine? Forgetting that the blood pressure is normal because of the medication. You see, and there's a cultural aspect to this whole discussion, or should I know a social-cultural or socio-economic aspect to this whole discussion, because being a hypertensive, in fact, any chronic disease, managing it is quite expensive. Because you're going to have to modify your diet, you're going to have to modify your daily activities, you're going to have to now add medication to it, and all of these are costs. It's because to eat healthier means that you have to be more
deliberate.
Yes, more deliberate, and so it's a major challenge. And the reason why, and in fact, hypertension has been called a silent killer. Yes, because most people would say that I don't feel anything, and so then they'll stop their medication. Then the next time you see them, there's a stroke. You see, and if you have a stroke in our setting, in our environment, it can be very challenging. You see, because even our buildings are not fit for exactly. Our health facilities don't have enough expertise to handle. I'm talking about enough healthcare workers to even deal with the stroke care. You see, and even if there were enough, can you pay for the stroke care? So in other words, stroke needs to be avoided as much as possible. So it's very important. And the reason why we need to discuss hypertension before 40 is that the earlier it says that you are diagnosed as hypertensive, and the earlier it says that you need medication, it means that your stay on the medication, the longer your stay on the medication is going to be, assuming you're going to have a full life of, let's say, 70, it means you're going to be on the medication for much longer, which then means that your risk of having side effects or complications from medication is also increasing. So the later we can hold off from developing hypertension, the better. That's why this topic is really important.
Okay, fantastic. So let's start by asking the question: the things that cause hypertension before 40, are they the same things that cause hypertension after 40?
Generally speaking, yes, but there's also some differences. And the reason why I say yes is that hypertension is basically a lifestyle disease. Now, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of the lifestyle that was associated with older people is we are now seeing more in the children. So something like obesity, we are seeing an increase in childhood obesity, which then means that the effect of obesity, which would have come later
in life,
is now happening earlier. So children are also developing, or young adults are developing hypertension as a result of lifestyle modifications that they did not do or they were not used to. And particularly childhood obesity, the problem or the issue with childhood obesity is that even if a child who was obese, even if that child actually loses the weight, the mere fact that he or she was obese in the past has an effect on her or him in the future. And so childhood obesity is something that needs to be avoided through and through. But unfortunately, because of technology, our children are not playing as much as we were doing. I mean, we were doing pillow, low, police and thief, and playing four corners and all sorts of things. Now you hardly find children doing that. They spend
police
the whole time.
Thief, I remember that.
Yes,
it's a very nice game.
Very nice game and very active. You are running around, shooting and falling and all of those things. Those were literally the good old days.
And
stay
was a nice one.
Very nice. I mean, and all those encourage activity, physical activity. But now most of the children, in fact, most schools now don't even have playgrounds,
which is terrible.
And so everybody, the psychology of the children are being directed towards technology. So most children are at home, sitting behind computer, TV, tablet, and so they are not exercising. So there's a lot of we are having an epidemic of childhood obesity. And like I said, even if you dealt with the childhood obesity after the fact, the effects are still there. Hypertension is one of them, diabetes is one of them. And these two combination is not a good thing at all, So that aside, another reason why people or young adults would develop hypertension would then be more organic causes like kidney issues. So kidney issues, renal artery stenosis can cause hypertension. Other hormonal issues can also cause hypertension. So when a young adult presents with high blood pressure, we would tend to try and rule out the organic causes like I've mentioned, among other things. So tumors and all those other things can present as hypertension in a young adult. But when all these are ruled out, then we then know that it's a lifestyle issue or a hereditary issue, or a combination of the two.
Okay. Hereditary.
Yes.
How does that play in this?
If a first degree relative has hypertension, the likelihood that child would have hypertension is very, very high. Much higher than the general population.
So what is it about those who have it as a matter of hereditary reasons? I mean, is it that their arteries are designed differently? I mean, what is it that's creating the hypertension?
So let me take us back one step.
Okay.
Apart from the organic cause of hypertension, where you can actually point to, say, a tumor or a kidney problem or a hormonal problem, that represents only about 20% of the cause of hypertension. Okay. The remaining 80%, we really don't know what it is. Okay. We just know that there are associations. So if you are obese, then your likelihood of developing hypertension is higher. So and we know obesity also runs in families. So if there's a family that has obesity issues, their hypertension would also be there.
I have a little joke about that, but you finish.
People with cholesterol or lipid issues can also develop hypertension. So if the family has an issue with lipid control, when I say lipid, I'm talking about fat, cholesterol, dyslipidemias and all those things. They can also present with hypertension. Sometimes they do have a heart or a blood vessel issue. Like you said, they may be designed differently. It's actually possible, and that can predispose them to having hypertension. Some connective tissue diseases, among other things. So hereditary means that it runs in the family. We may not be able to point to a particular reason, a particular thing that is causing that hypertension, but once somebody in your family, a primary degree relative, a primary means the parents or sibling, that's primary. If it's a secondary relative, the risk is still there, but it's not as much as a primary relative. So bottom line is, if there's hypertension in your family, and depending on the severity of the hypertension in your family, you should know yourself and begin to put measures in place now to reduce. You see, I'm choosing my words carefully, to reduce the probability. It means that the hypertension might still develop, but it may not be as severe, and it will not start as early as it would have started if you didn't do anything about it.
So when you say hereditary, I think of something that I heard many years ago. And I think, I'm trying to recall who said it first for me to hear, but it was related to a preacher, know, and I think basically he was trying to say that, and he was very huge and obese at that time. And he was saying that he remembers how his father died at age 50, right? And he was 45, and he was as big as his father was, right? And the whole thing was, okay, you know what? I have a choice. At this point, I'm not yet 50. Maybe I have 5 years, but maybe I can have 20 years. It's up to me. So he took a decision to change how it is that he ate, right? Now, I hear that. Okay, so in his story, he was sharing how that, look, I love my mother's cooking. My mother likes to fry everything. And I fall in love with my mother's cooking. Now, I marry a woman who doesn't like to fry everything. And I say, you know what? You better learn how to cook like my mother. And so I ship my wife off to go and learn how to cook the way my mother does. And she comes back, and then she learns how to fry everything. Now, what I don't know is that it was my mother's frying that killed my dad. And so I'm prepping to kill myself with the same frying,
Exactly.
And so this is, I love at times when we say hereditary, I understand that the genetics of it and all that. But there's this element of also social hereditary, if that's a way to put it.
Genetics, how a gene will manifest is highly dependent on the environment it finds itself in. So you are very right that the obesity may run in a family because of how they go about their things. So if a family indulges in fast foods every evening, it's not going to be surprising that they are all going to be obese. So at that point, are you going to say that obesity is hereditary or it's environmental? Well, it doesn't really matter. What we know is that whether you are hereditarily predisposed to obesity, once you make certain changes, you don't get as obese as you possibly would have become. Or provided that obesity is not a hormone-related issue. Because if it's a hormone-related issue, sometimes even if you change your lifestyle, it might not work. So you need treatment for the hormone issue that is causing the obesity. Very, very important. But you are very right. Environment plays a key role.
All right. So let's look at fixing the problem.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you're watching us right now and you have any questions for Dr. Kelvin, kindly send them on 0550585832. The hashtag is Breakfast Daily. We do want to hear from you. And let me just start from here and look at the solutions and saying that Kweku Boateng gave some of the things that he was asked to do. So, number one, exercise. Let's talk about exercise.
It cannot be overemphasized.
Okay.
Let's just start by saying that hypertension is a lifestyle disease.
Okay.
Primarily,
how you live your life.
How you live your life will determine whether you get hypertension and how severe it's going to be.
Okay.
Which means that the treatment also requires lifestyle modification.
Okay, all right.
So that's the first thing you have to understand.
Okay.
It's not the fact that you are hypertensive doesn't mean that you are going to take medication.
Okay.
However, you are going to take medication, just that it might not be in the form of pills.
Okay, all right.
So you have to look at it that way to know what's going on, because sometimes you tell people that you have to exercise and say, me, I don't like exercising. Well, you're going to die if you don't exercise. Literally. Especially for the young adults, because like I said, the longer your hypertension stays, the more likely you have to have complications. So let me start with let me shock you the complications, and then we'll come back to the treatment, because that will make people pay attention.
Okay.
So that one of the complications of hypertension will be stroke, and there are two kinds of stroke. Either your blood vessel is going to shrink, so there's no blood going to the brain, and then that part will die. That's called ischemic stroke.
Okay.
Or the pressure is so high that the blood pressure will burst.
Wow.
That's a hemorrhagic stroke. Both of them are dangerous. Both of them cause death, but hemorrhagic is more it kills faster.
Okay.
So we don't want hemorrhagic stroke. If I told you, if you had to choose,
ischemic stroke is better.
Because that one takes time. So it can give you forewarning, and then you can do something about it. So stroke is the most important. So stroke and death, obviously, they are quite closely related.
Yeah.
Kidney damage, because the pressure going into the kidneys is so high that it can actually cause damage to the kidney.
Okay.
So a lot of hypertensive have complications of kidney damage. Eyes. Your eye, because the blood vessel that goes into the eye, they are small. So when the blood pressure is so high, it can cause damage over there as well. So your eye problems, so blindness, it can eventually lead to blindness. And any part of the body as well can be affected. Your heart, which is the main pump station. Yeah. Now, your blood pressure basically is there are two readings, the up and the down.
Yes.
The up, when the heart contracts,
diastolic and
systolic. That's the systolic. When the heart contracts, when it pushes the blood out, that's the systolic.
Yes.
And the pressure in that systolic, the aim is to overcome the pressure in the blood vessel, so that blood can actually move from the heart into the blood vessel and go into the rest of the body.
Okay.
So if your blood in your vessels are high, that means that your heart has to do more work. And if you go to the gym and you are doing more work, what happens to your muscles? It gets bigger. Yeah. So one would say, so the same thing happens in the heart. The heart muscle will also get bigger.
Okay.
Now that's a good thing, right?
You think it's a good thing,
but it's not, because when you and here's the thing: when your hands are getting bigger, what happens to your shirt? It cannot fit anymore. So you have to buy a new shirt.
Yes.
In the heart doesn't wear shirts, but the heart has valves.
Okay.
And the valves are supposed to close when it's time to close. Okay. So as the heart gets bigger, unfortunately, the valves are not able.
Longer close.
Exactly. They can no longer close. So then it becomes incompetent.
Wow.
So then your heart is not able to perform as it's supposed to. And so you now start having complications of difficulty breathing, coughing, all those things. You are no longer functioning at your optimum level. And so we don't want that to happen. Yeah. So you need to do something about it. Yeah. So lifestyle modification is key. And it's cheaper, actually, than the medication, because it gives you a general well-being, improves your general well-being. So jogging is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. 30 minutes of jogging at least 3 times a week can help improve your cardiovascular profile. If you don't like jogging, swimming also does about the same thing. So swimming is also very, very, very good. Tennis is also, in fact, tennis and swimming, I put them in the same category, because they are exercises that they affect the whole body. Affect the whole body. So swimming and swimming and tennis and cycling, if you can find the side road to cycle, because if you don't find a good road, somebody will knock you down. So then the next thing is what you eat. Literally, you are what you eat. So if you're taking a lot of junk food, a lot of fatty foods, you're going to have problems with cholesterol and atherosclerosis, which will then either precipitate your hypertension or worsen it. So you need to do something about it, about what you take in. So cut down your oil and fats and oils, and also reduce your salt intake. Salt is also not acceptable, so cut it down. If you can eliminate it, fine. fine, but if you can't reduce it as much as possible, very important.
Right.
If all these lifestyle changes are not helping, or if your blood pressure is too high to wait, then you'll be put on medication. Exactly, because we need to reduce the blood pressure so that the heart can actually supply the rest of the body with blood.
Super.
So very, very important.
All right, super. Dr. Kevin, how can people get to you? Because this conversation, I'm not sure it's going to end here.
No, it's not going to end.
I think people want to find out how to reach you.
Well, I mean, I'm active on social media, so you can find me at Kelvin Owusu MD on all the channels.
Okay.